let's get right on with our guest tonight. Maybe some of you are Michael Horn, who was on our show here a while back, and I am pulling up his info. He's a rather eclectic guy. He the official contact for Billy Meier Contacts, and is award-winning painter and director and a number of things. And with that, I'm going to welcome Michael Horn. Glad to have you back, Michael.
Well, thank you so very much for having me on.
Yeah, well, it's always, you're such an eloquent guest. How could we say no?
Well, that would be eloquent in itself.
Well, of course, we did invite you back.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so you've got a new video out, right? Let's get to that.
Well, I have a relatively new film out called The Silent Revolution of Truth, the one we're referring to.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us about it a little bit? We'll get that started off.
Sure. That's a film that I made with a friend of mine, a young German fellow. We went to Switzerland to interview Meier, Billy, and other people. This was in late 2006, and then we did some other interviews and work in 2007, and by just about the beginning of 2008, we came out with this film titled The Silent Revolution of Truth. And what's the best way to put it? It's the newest film, and it features Meier, as he is, relatively speaking, today. Now he's 72 years old, speaking about all of the various factors of his own life, his childhood, his connection to the ETs and all this stuff. It was a process that was, for me and for my partner and other people, quite interesting, quite amazing, and hopefully able to bring more and more people into the awareness of this case. And it's, in my opinion, it's monumental importance to humanity.
So, let's we talked about this when you were with us before, but let's just do a nutshell, and then we can get on some other things that you wanted to talk about. But obviously, the Billy Meier case is a bit controversial, and it has been. And what are the primary reasons why you've kind of gone on board with it? What's your thinking, your reasoning? Why does it represent a genuine case to you?
Great questions. As you may know from my information, I first became acquainted with this case in 1979. That's 30 years ago. And when I saw the photo book that was put out at that time with the stunning and clear daytime photos of these craft, and even Swiss fighter jets trying to intercept it, and interviews with people, and analysis, it was really, really amazing to me. And what can I say? I started to look into it more and more deeply. I wanted to know if it was what it appeared to be. In these ensuing years, got involved with, I met all the main three major investigators on the case. I met Meier and numerous people, including family members and others who'd been around him and these events for 35 years in some cases or more. And I was able to conclude through researching all the testing that had been done on the physical evidence, all of the, and in time, the amazing prophetically accurate information. This was far beyond a lights-in-the-sky anecdotal UFO case. And I specifically state to people that this is an authentic case. As a matter of fact, I will claim that it is the only scientifically proven and still ongoing UFO contact case in the world, and that there is a reason for all of the evidence being presented, for all of the prophecies, and that it is more important than the physical evidence. It's the prophetic information and the case that are at the heart of the matter. There must be a reason. If a truly momentous event like contacts with an extraterrestrial race by an Earthman are true, if that's true, there has to be a reason behind it. I think to me right now, it's pretty clear what the reason is. It's clear that the case is true. And I also don't say to people that everything in the case is true, because I'm not in a position to prove it one way or the other. I will state now that anybody doing what I and some other people have done can prove to their satisfaction one way or the other whether they think this is true. But I like the idea that you will hammer away at how do we know that it's authentic, and how do we know how important it is. That is what we must be paying attention to now, especially, and it's long-winded, but especially in light of all the claims about UFOs and ETs that are just bandied about everywhere.
All right. What are some of the prophecies that kind of bring our audience up to speed, Michael, on the prophecies that have come to pass, and what are some of the things that are left to kind of unfold?
Sure. Well, and I'm not going to skip your question at all. I just want people to know, are at least 4, 5, 6 different documents on my website accessible completely for free that have an enormous amount of prophetic information, but I'm going to refer
to one website.
Oh, thank you. It's They Fly, THEYF as in Frank, They Fly, FLY, theyfly.com. I was about to stick Frank in there for no reason. There's no Frank in there. It's theyfly.com. And
well, maybe Frank wants to go in there.
Hey, well, there you go. He can drop me an email. I'll get back to him in a couple of days. But F's and S's and things like that sometimes are indistinguishable over the air. But They Fly, and you'll find things in their prophecies and predictions and all that in the center of my website, and just some amazing information. And what to answer your question specifically, in the 1958 document that is, again, easily accessible from August of 1958, Meier specifically foretells 2 U.S. wars with Iraq. The second one, he says, will lead to an unbelievable disaster, terrorism, and other negative, that this war would be conducted under a president who will be the son of a former president. And how much more specific can we get for, that was written 50 years ago.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that
absolutely. And he also names AIDS, AIDS, an epidemic. He foretells, while some other people may have also been talking about it, he specifically does foretell the use of plastic credit cards for transactions, that people will carry telephones on them for use for the telephone calls, that there will be televisions and computers. Imagine, 58, he says, computers in everyone's home that will be interconnected electronically around the world. He gives the forthcoming dates of the major rocket launches by the U.S. and the then Soviet Union to the moon. He also states the first U.S. claimed landing will be a hoax, which, some people fall down on either side of that claim.
Right.
And dozens more things. He warned specifically about a coming European Union, which will act ultimately as a dictatorship to control all the people under its, sphere of influence, and that it, along with the United States, will enact how does he put it, biogrammatic or something, biometric chipping of human beings, and that if this is allowed to take place, people will completely lose freedoms in this world. This is 1958. 1958.
Now, were those prophecies, Michael, were those imparted to him by the Plejorans? And if so, did he record all of it himself, or did he have somebody helping him record this information?
Well, this is another interesting aspect of it, because Meier's contacts with a Plejaran named Svath started when he was a mere 5-year-old boy in 1952. For 11 years, these contacts were, carrying on, and then they were taken over in, I think, about 1953 or so by a woman named Asket, another human, supposedly from an adjoining parallel universe of ours. Now, both Svath and Asket worked with tutored, educated, etc. Meier, but part of what they were also doing was helping cultivate and refine his own innate abilities due to his own spirit's, if you will allow me to use this word, personal history. And I probably should explain that. And again, let me try to also, focus and state that there are things in here that we simply have to use the term speculative around, because we cannot prove it. We can certainly prove many of the prophecies and predictions were written and published on dates well before their occurrence, but in some cases we can't do that in an ironclad fashion. What happens is we ultimately see that while some of these documents cannot be exactly pinpointed to the time that they're claimed to have been written, what occurs is that prophecies in them start occurring subsequent to own publication date on internet websites and all that. So let me try to clarify this thing about his spirit and all of that, and how he was able to do a lot of the prophetic work himself. Not all of it, but a lot of it. They claim that reincarnation is a fact of life. We don't know that.
Right.
We may believe it's true, or we may believe it's not true. We have no way currently of really knowing. So what they say is, according to their knowledge and understanding, something called the human spirit. Now, this is different than the soul or the personality or consciousness. It is the immortal, eternal part of us that, they claim, reincarnates over and over and over, literally countless millions of times throughout the course of evolution. This is a mind-boggling concept that can only go, well, who knows? Now, they also claim that they can do some tracking, that their technology allows them to identify with any given human being pretty much previous stations of that spirit. And what we have to say here, and this is where it differs very much from any of what I know as the teachings of reincarnation that may occur in some of our religions or, belief systems. The person, him or herself, isn't reincarnating. So we don't have Grant or Michael or, whoever reincarnating saying was so-and-so in a previous existence. We have an energy known as the human spirit, which is not a personality, but a powerhouse of energy that has a destiny to rejoin what they call the creation, or what we would call the universe, in co-creation. And that this spirit form takes on new personalities, new identities, countless millions of times that we do not have any actual knowledge of, for the most part, or recollection of, but that will change when we are far enough down the incarnational cycle, and when we have evolved enough to be able to handle and know information about our previous incarnations. Following this so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, with that in mind, they're saying that in the case of Billy Meier, his spirit form has played the part of a prophet. Many times, specifically 6 times in the past, along with probably thousands, if not more already, countless incarnations in our world that were either not nearly as noteworthy or may have been stellar in some areas, but we don't see them as connected to this lineage of prophets or to this personality today known as Billy Edward Albert Meier. Okay, so part of this, how is this guy supposedly doing this? Does he do it all himself? They've also provided him with a lot of what we would call prophetic or predictive information, some of which, such as in the case of prophecies of Enoch or Enoch, Elijah or Jeremiah, are said to have originated literally thousands of years ago and pertains to these times as well. This is information that we are told, in this case, has been expunged, deleted from the Bibles, if you will, because it was simply...
It was one of the books that was... It was one of the books that was deleted, the Book of Enoch, correct?
And the so-called Keys of Enoch or Book of Enoch that people come up with,
right,
according anyhow to the Plejaren, it ain't the real deal. This is, this is the stuff. The Enoch or Henoch prophecies that I have on my website are the prophecies they claim were originally published by this Enoch or Henoch thousands of years ago, that they simply put in a more contemporary language for us to understand.
And Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't the Book of Enoch talk about the Watchers?
Well, the Book of Enoch may talk about the Watchers. I don't know that the actual Book of Enoch or the actual Enoch prophecies speak about the Watchers with that term. It may be that it's referring to those extraterrestrials who were here long ago, over time, right? Interacting.
Yeah.
Some were representing themselves as our gods. Others were interacting with these various prophets, trying to bring what they call the true teaching of creation to our world, which time and again got into religious teaching or was expunged completely from the historical and or religious record.
Now, for the folks in our audience who don't know much about Billy, and once again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Billy's like kind of an obscure farmer that lives in a small Swiss village, and
well, yes,
has not really sought out a lot of publicity, has he not?
Well, this is all it's partially correct in the sense he started off as a kind of obscure guy in a rural Swiss village that nobody knew about, but in the course of his life, lots of people have found out about him. Subsequently, he lived, and we show this part in the film. This is one of the more fascinating aspects of the film to me, that Meier, during the late 1950s and I think early 60s, he was known as the Phantom in the Middle East, in West Pakistan, Turkey, and India. The police departments in those countries hired Meier to bring in, to apprehend serial killers and mass murderers, and not to go out and annihilate people, but to apprehend these people and bring them in whenever possible, bring them in alive, because of two things. One, these were people who were terrorizing communities, and two, Meier had nerves of steel and a highly capable guy who had apparently mastered any number of things, including quick draw and sharpshooting with pistols and you name it, coming from the schools. Yeah, I mean, he's also
he's a man of many hidden talents. I mean, I would have never thought that about Billy. I mean, I know this stuff has been very controversial, but I distinctly recall when those photographs first came out and how absolutely striking they were. And anybody, even if Billy's name doesn't ring a bell with you, the minute you see the photographs,
right,
the detail, the clarity, everything on it is just like absolutely astounding and mind-boggling.
Well, they're incomparable. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you're not familiar with Billy's photographs or Michael's work, by all means, do so. Take a look, because it'll knock your socks off. It's interesting stuff.
I have to agree, of course, and what I would tell people is, when you come across this, because, again, nowadays, there's no shortage of people talking about UFO extraterrestrials, claiming to be in contact or channeling and all of this. But when you go to the Meier case and you want to see evidence, you will find, and I will state this claim, and so far nobody's really, even all the people and I have battles with people in the UFO community, and I say these things, nobody refutes it because there's no evidence like Meier's evidence. I personally challenge the top professional international skeptics starting in 2001, people who had claimed that the Meier case was an easily duplicated hoax. I said, can you duplicate one of his photos and films? They said yes, and I have a whole section on my website showing that they all, to a person, failed. They can't do it. On top of that, I included the representative of the top skeptics group in them. And this guy flubs all over himself trying to claim that Meier's using model trees and model UFOs. Ultimately, he had to admit he couldn't prove it. And on top of that, he then, after the film was out, he went absolutely wild, and he went to this special effects company they are the one, they're called Uncharted Territory, and they won the Academy Award for Special Effects for Independence Day.
Huh.
And they had, I'd gone to them a couple years before Meier's films and photos, and they said, hey, those are not models. And I said, can you duplicate them? They said, well, if we could, we've got to go to CGI. So the skeptic went to the same company to try to get them to refute that and to debunk Meier's stuff. And they only made a stronger statement about how it would be virtually impossible for Meier to have used any models to do this, and that they, they're not even believers in UFOs, but they said, no models here. So this is important for people that are, starting to look at this UFOs and ETs and contact. When you get to the Meier case, you are in a completely different territory. And believe it or not, the biggest opponents to the Meier case shut down the skeptics. We don't hear from them anymore. The biggest opponents are in groups that call themselves UFO researchers, in the group that calls itself exopolitics, and all the people that are running around making noise about imaginary contacts, imaginary ETs that, believe me, are not walking among us. And this is where the battles are, to bring the information to people.
Well, when you mention the fact, Michael, that they've never replicated any of those pictures, and I don't know about, just speaking for myself, I don't know about you, Doug, but I have never seen anybody ever replicate any of those pictures.
No.
I've never seen any other computer-generated graphics or any other person ever step up to it. And to be real honest, I'm not 100% sure one way or another. But nonetheless, the pictures in themselves, well, when you say that, Michael, that makes me, that really makes me think about it, because those pictures are so clear and so distinct. It'd be really difficult to.
Well, they were taken back in the
79?
Yeah, but earlier, starting in 1964.
Yeah, but see, there was no CGI back then.
No.
Right. Yeah.
And no home computers, and the guy's got one arm, and he lives in a farm. I mean,
Yeah, and these weren't two pie plates suspended by a wire.
No. And as I say, even a top level award-winning special effects company says no pie plates, no wires, no models. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys are skeptics about UFOs, so at least they were honest. And this is where it's like anybody can do their own due diligence here, and they can realize, wait a minute. And the problem is that this has been the most successfully suppressed story in human history. If this is true, if this man indeed for the past 67 plus years has been meeting with extraterrestrials, going on board, even taking photographs from their ships above the Earth, which I have a couple on my website, if that's true, why doesn't everybody know about it?
Yeah.
So this, but they hear about all the nonsense.
Well, here's a question from the chat room.
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
From Jess. Aren't the Plejarians the same as what some call flying humanoids?
No, they're not. They are fully human beings who certainly in any and all of their interactions or presence with Meier, including on our planet where they have been actually observed accidentally, because they try to stay concealed outside in nature and as well in his office. They are always simply behaving as humans do, walking, and all of that. The flying humanoids, the films like from Mexico and stuff like that, that's another phenomenon that I'm really not capable of commenting on because I don't know enough about it.
Sure. Well, what other cases are you aware of that are genuine?
I'm not. I can tell you this. Roswell, in my opinion, certainly was a genuine UFO crash. I heard about it in 1950s in a high school I was going to. I'll never forget it. I know exactly where I was standing, in what room, and what direction I was facing, because a classmate of mine had pulled me over to tell me that his dad was in the Air Force, and they found a flying saucer. There were little bodies of these, and he told me this story. And he says, yeah, they moved it to this Air Force base in Ohio. Well, fast forward 52 years, we know this to be true. It's certainly, let's put it this way. We know that this is the strongest story going about UFOs evidence. And the Plejaren themselves say, yes, that was a genuine crash. There were at least 8 other ones. These were android beings that were found. These were not the actual extraterrestrial humans who would have designed these craft and built and designed the androids. And the problem is this for the UFO community. Roswell, that is a case that the government must be in love with. And I say that, why? Because there's no remaining evidence. You cannot prove a darn thing. For the people, well-intentioned as they are in the so-called disclosure that want the government to come clean, it's a noble effort, and indeed, even the Meier case itself is about revealing the cover-up. But the government doesn't have to admit anything because you cannot prove it. This is where I have personally offered the Meier case to Stephen Greer from the Disclosure Project and from Stephen Bassett from the PRGX conference, fame and all. They don't want to touch it because, in my opinion, it's going to take the thunder away from all of their efforts to be the shining knights that get the government to prove, to reveal, to. That's not going to happen unless there's a really different agenda on the part of the government, and one that will not be favorable to us. So I say look out if they start admitting anything, or if we see a fake ET attack or anything like that, because they are playing the UFO community for fools. In truth, the UFO community plays itself for a fool by playing the government's game. Don't play somebody else's game if you want to win the game. Play your own game. And this is what has driven us with these people running around. And now there's 1 million faxes they want people to send. I'm yawning about this. We just had an election back, and the man who was running for president wanted to end the Iraq war. And, a good man, clearly, an intelligent man, but I don't think he ended the Iraq war despite the fact that tens of millions of people voted for him with the intention and belief that he was going to do that. So to send 1 million faxes to Washington to demand they tell the truth about UFOs, please, people, go do your homework. Realize, in my opinion, the next statement, that the case is the real deal. And what do you want to do about that? It's a whole different thing. So to answer you, I don't know of any other cases that have anything that we can sink our teeth into and establish anything with.
What's the Swiss government's stance on Billy?
Well, let's put it this way. Officially, they don't, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, the Swiss intelligence and the CIA maintained an observation facility. I was just 2 weeks ago. I was driving by where it had been located up there in the hills in Switzerland, and it's a relatively quiet now Swiss military base that is now, I think it still may be a missile base, but I'm not sure. But they observed Billy from that base for many years. He's been under constant CIA and Swiss military and other military intelligence since anybody got wind of these craft. The CIA itself has photographed the craft, perhaps the Swiss have too, but they don't talk about it officially because, let's face it, nobody wants to admit that a simple Swiss man is having experiences of such a historic proportion that the governments of the world participating in. That wouldn't exactly give them a hell of a lot of credibility for their own, power and authority, would it?
Now, forgive me if I mispronounce this. Plejaren? Plejarens. Okay. Yeah. So the Plejarens, they're obviously invested in humanity from the standpoint of spiritual enrichment and spiritual growth. And have they made themselves known to our government? Is our government aware of them, where they come from, what their mission is? I
would say the answer is a couple of answers here. One, because the CIA has observed Meier and monitored, that is, tapped and taped and whatever, with the best of equipment, which they can now do from much farther distance away because they have that kind of sophisticated technology. They not only know that the case is real, they probably know more of the information than you or I do because they could have the best translators in the world going through the 25,000 plus pages and, bringing all these stuff up to the awareness of all the powers that be. According to Meier, the top levels of all of the major governments, plus the UN, know about the case and know that it's true, and they know the prophetic information in it.
So let me go out on a limb here. Would it be safe to assume that the governments, the institutions as they are reluctant to admit this on the basis that they still control us all, and that by acknowledging the fact that we're being visited by a more advanced culture who's interested in helping us grow spiritually, that's going to bring the whole construct of the institution tumbling down?
Yeah, they're more than reluctant, but you got it exactly right. They are beyond reluctant. They are invested in maintaining control. But let me say something about that, because, and I've said it many times, that's understandable from the perspective of governments, religions, politics, military. It's understandable that, oh yeah, we can't do anything about it. There's people here from another world with technology so advanced that they are completely out of our constraint. Have a nice day and don't forget to go shopping. You know, they're not going to do it. So you understand, we have got to understand that and still press forward. But the antidote to that is what's contained in these teachings as one of the three main points, and that is that each and every single individual takes back complete and total personal self-responsibility for their lives, for every thought, every feeling, every action, and comes to their own informed conclusions, and in so doing starts to link up and unite with other people of like mind, not to overthrow the government and, you know, do dastardly things, but to regain our own freedom, to alter the structures of things through informed choice and intelligence and love and harmony. And there are times, certainly, when people have to be very forceful, but when you start to become self-empowered again, where your authority doesn't rest either with politics and governments or imaginary gods, saints, angels, masters, gurus, and spirit guides, then you start to become the kind of true human being that they are encouraging us to become. We abandoned that historically long, long ago, collectively, not necessarily.
Well, that's got to be a very interesting story in itself. If what you're saying is indeed true, then all of us are these wonderful spiritual beings that are on a quest, much in the same way as Eastern religion, almost like coming back to get better with each incarnation, to grow, to learn. And if what you say is true, then all of us right now are each little universe walking around completely oblivious to the fact that we share this wonderful unity, that we can't break that down. And so if we do break that down, and that is indeed true, we become unified.
Well,
in our spirituality, we realize we're all brothers, and so therefore all facades are going to be collapsing around us.
Yeah, there are some other things about that. When we say that we're all wonderful spiritual beings, in every incarnation, the spirit comes in a kind of balanced, positive, neutral energy that has both the positive and the negative, and every personality, every consciousness that forms, every ego that forms to create the personality of human beings that we recognize, which is a separate thing from the pure neutral spirit, has the choice to go left or right, positive, negative, and we all have to make mistakes in the course of each incarnation. There can be incarnations where we actually have some setbacks, and then there's ones where we make great progress. So it's not that we're just bliss bunnies walking around, smiling at each other. We have tremendous self-responsibility. They further describe that as being accomplished through the ongoing 24-hour-a-day monitoring of every thought and feeling that we have and every impulse to action. So it's an ongoing meditation. We're in action as well as while we're in strict meditation. So we are constantly course correcting and making these moment by moment minute contributions to our own and the collective evolution, but it's really going to take place over a very long time, and nonetheless we try incarnation to do the best and make the best of it. and for ourselves. And there's many other factors around this, and you can read about it for free in the teaching on the website, how this works, how the past lives can play a part in our current lives, but it's very different than what we've been led to believe in other teaching. And again, it's teaching. You have to work it through yourself. Is it true or not? So, yes, this is, the purpose is this unification and this peaceful, harmonious, loving, brotherly existence. But we have got to go through apparently a lot of stuff that we have collectively over many millennia brought, into being. Baggage through our ignorance of the laws of cause and effect.
How did it come? If we must share characteristics with these folks, and so how did it come that we became the pariahs? Is there any truth to being cast out of Eden?
No, it's not that. The original sin, Pleiaren, is not that fallen from grace spirits, because they say really each spirit isn't fallen at all. It starts off at a relatively young state and has to keep growing in knowledge and experience in each incarnation, and that we are already, each person on this planet, the spirit form dwelling in each person is at minimum a million years old already from the very beginning of its creation. Now, to try to answer that question, there, according to the information in this case, and again, you can find this on my website for free, there's something called Contact 251, and Meier tells the history, a good portion of the history of human races, its lineage in a certain portion of this universe that goes back over 22 million years. And the short form of it is that there were already, going back tens of millions of years ago, more advanced and highly developed spacing human beings. We're not talking about lizards and reptiles and little great. We're talking human beings who had already evolved quite high enough that they could indeed travel in space, and some of them in time. Some who had migrated to the star system of Sirius, A and B over there, and formed, their civilizations there and grew to very high levels of development, and some of whom, in their pursuit of only spiritual development, made the, and I'm using this word very specifically, mistake of prioritizing their spiritual development and positivity above all realistic levels of development that require positive and negative. To that end, they genetically engineered out of themselves even their own fighting spirit, since they didn't want any negativity or violence. This resulted in their becoming easy marks for hostile space-traveling ET rays, who then started attacking them. And they quickly realized that they had to do some catch-up work, and while they were working on their own genetic repair, they genetically engineered, because they could, a human race that would be very willing warrior defenders, because they took a couple of genetic modifications on this race. We're still answering your question about us and being pariahs.
So, I'm following you. Sounds good.
Okay, so what they did to this race of human beings was to genetically amp up their propensity for violence and aggression. Genetically modified them to be more willing, violent warriors, and at the same time, they dramatically honed down the propensity for a long life. So these beings would not be able to live long enough to overthrow their creation. They made their lifespans fall within a rough limit of approximately 100 years. They built in degenerative diseases and other things. Then, as you'll be able to read from the story, there were circumstances where some of the more benevolent of the advanced spiritual beings in the Sirius star system took literally millions of people and fled from there, when other members of their government there decided that they were going to annihilate all these warriors because they no longer needed them, that had rebalanced themselves. And this is what led to emigrations from the Sirian star system to a far distant galaxy, or part of the galaxy where there was, a nice little star on the end of the spiral arm of a galaxy, and some habitable planets, which we come to know as Mars, Malona, and Earth, and the populations were settled in on different planets here, and ultimately, without describing everything that happened on the other two planets, the Earth humans here all carried this genetic manipulation traits. And in the interbreeding with the indigenously or human beings on this planet, as well with other extraterrestrial travelers, some of whom may have been here already or who would come in the times that were future to these migrations, everyone on the planet has since inherited these two genetic manipulations, which have, limited us and made us too violent, too controlled, too irrational. And then, in addition to that, some of the ETs who played God is, over time, inculcated within us these religions and religious beliefs, and here we are today, pretty messed up from thousands of years of this kind of misbehavior. They have said that the scientists will eventually find, and may already have found the first one, the genetic manipulations for aggression, or first, actually, they'll find them for the longevity factor. And in time, these things will be rectified, and they must be rectified before we will be allowed to venture deeply into space, because we cannot bring this kind of aggression out into space. There are already beings far more powerful that would literally wipe out aggressors from Earth and come back and clean the clock here, and this would be a distant memory. So this is part of the information of the case.
All right, let's finish off. Is Billy Meier the only one that the Plejarians are communicating with?
They claim that he is not only the only one that they're communicating with, but the only person on the planet who actually maintain an interaction with extraterrestrials. Now, there's lots of people that will claim otherwise, and there are people who have had very brief interactions throughout, even the last, let's say, century, here and there, where there were some extraterrestrials that interacted for a very brief time for very specific purposes, but that there are no other on the Earth today who actually are interacting with extraterrestrials. Now, to just ice that a little bit, a couple of weeks ago, I said I was in Switzerland, and one night some friends of mine stayed at the center where I was working late at night, and they'd go outside a lot because there are sightings there still relatively frequently. And there were several ships, small ships, telemeter discs that were seen in the sky, and somebody dragged Billy out, say, hey, look, and Billy said, okay, do you want me to turn the light off? And the guy said, what, you can do that? And Billy looked at the sky, and the disc that was shining brightly suddenly shut off, and Billy went inside. And this has been reported as something he could do for, at least 10 years ago. This is in a book. Billy still has his face-to-face contacts with these people. He has more than amply demonstrated. And before we, conclude tonight altogether, I'll give you the most powerful, best pieces of evidence of the genuineness of his contacts. But yes, they claim this is the only guy that can do this. He's the only one who is doing it, and nobody else has been able to produce any verifiable evidence to the contrary.
All right. Well, let me tag on to that now. Mermaid in the chat room brought up a question. How can you authenticate that Billy is a prophet when I myself have been told, quote unquote, they have been important in biblical times? And she mentions that she was told that she used to be Mary Magdalene.
Well, yeah, go ahead. All due respect to everybody, just so people understand a little bit about this, number one, you don't believe anything I'm telling you. I'm reporting on information, so don't even be offended if it disagrees with your perception. Meier happens to be, and this goes back to 1963, intimately connected with the story of the man we call Jesus, who was apparently never known by that name in his lifetime. The name Emmanuel is the name that was actually given in the Old in Isaiah, and again, briefly, only once in the New Testament, the mention of Emmanuel, and that was the name that was to be the prophet, the Messiah of the coming times. Meier is the co-discoverer of documents which are called the Talmud Emmanuel, which are said to be the original teaching and writing, if you will, of man Emmanuel, who indeed was crucified but survived the crucifixion. And I want to answer her more directly, so I'm not going to give you all the details. But I did ask Meier 2 or 3 years ago, did Emmanuel marry Mary Magdalene? He said no. Mary Magdalene was a true friend to Emmanuel, but that Emmanuel, after his mother Mary died when they were all in India together, he married a woman and bore numerous descendants. And there's more stuff here. So how can Meier say he's the only prophet or whatever? Let's put it this way. it's one thing. There are many people, I know a couple people I'm in touch with on the internet, astrologers, who've come up with accurate predictor prophecies. That's something that happens throughout history. The difference is that Meier has a voluminous record of the most specific and uncanny, prophetically accurate information of all times. And as I said, I'll give you one of them that you can read on my website, before we're over here. And that anyone who wants to claim that they're connected biblically or this or that, the other thing, the burden of proof is on the person. It's not on mine. It's on the person to really be able to validate that. And I personally don't know how anybody could validate that they were Mary Magdalene or Joseph or anybody, because it's a
and this person's not trying to say that she was. She said she was told that, and
right.
What that leads into is, a lot of people are told a lot of things, and the big question is, why are we that Billy is the real deal when so many others have a similar story?
Well, we're not to. We are not to believe a darn thing. What we are to do is to do the due diligence. And I've done some of it for people, but they can certainly do it for themselves. They can review my material. They can go and look. I was recently on a so-called science forum, a World Information Forward, about Meier publishing specific information about Jupiter and its moon Io in 1978, 5 months before our probe got there. And that I had the chairman of the astronomy department at Cornell University affirm that if Meier really did publish that information, well, he was right, because what Meier did is publish the most information of that Voyager mission, which was only announced fully 3 days after the lead investigator was already back in the States clutching that information that Meier published 5 months earlier. Now, I don't mean to be complex here, but when I say that Meier's published prophetically information, I mean in sciences that are so vast and diverse, and that we can prove he did it, that it'll make your head spin. So before we miss the opportunity for the people that want to know how they can verify or vet this information, on my website, I think it's in the latest evidence part, I'm not looking at it right now, there's an article about a 5,100-year-old ice mummy and how this proves the Meier case is true. Without giving you all of it, because I want you to read it, I'm going to give you the bullet points.
Yeah, go ahead.
In 91, Meier, in a conversation that was about many things, by the way, they say there's going to be a discovery in a few months about an ice mummy that's 5,100 and some years old in the Austrian Alps. And I'm telling you this because it so happens that our distant ancestors actually knew this man and interacted with him, and we'll tell you what we know about him. And this was in 1991. Well, in 1991, several months later, this discovery is made. Okay, well, maybe Meier went back in and post-dated that, right? So he publishes this information 5 years later, in a book that has about 21 years worth of Meier's information in it. You can see this all on my website. A cover of the book cover is there, copy of the book cover, copyright dates, you can know from Switzerland. But the interesting thing is this. 5 years later, in 2001, scientists bring this mummy into a hospital in Italy because they want to find out what killed the man. And they find out that he's got a fractured skull, and lo and behold, there's an arrowhead lodged deep in his back, and they conclude this man was killed with a bow and arrow. Okay? Now, when you go to my website and you go into Meier's information, which he claims he first published in 1991, but okay, let's say he published it in 1996, 5 years before they determined what killed him, you are going to get a wake-up call when you read what the Plejaren told him, allegedly in as early as 91 and no later than obviously 96, how this man died. And when you read that, if you are a scientifically clear-thinking individual, you are going to go from this one document alone, holy moly, this man is telling the truth, and there is no possible way on earth he could have hoaxed it. So this is to answer the questions about many prophets and why him and why not me or my friend who's being visited by people from wherever. You are going to see the difference when you read this. And then if you're curious and you read the rest of the stuff that's freely available on my site, you're going to go nuts because you're going to say, well, wait a minute, how come we don't know about this? There's so much of it.
Interesting. Well, what honestly troubles me, and I mean, let's just assume for a moment that it's all true. I mean, the Plejarians are in contact with Billy Meier. He's the only one. And if this is such a if this is such an important thing, why the covert? Why not more? Why not contact people who can truly make a difference?
Well, you see, I'm going to tell you that they actually have, and that's the reason your listeners and you and I are talking. Let me back up and answer it, and I want to save enough time before we're totally done on the show.
We have 7 minutes.
Okay, I want to tell people I'm going to give an offer to your listeners to give them something for free, too.
Wow.
Okay. So here's it. Yeah, that's coming. So here's the answer.
That's why we like to have you back on the show, Michael. You're always such a gracious guest.
Well, I like to do it because I want to do what I can. We'll leave it at that, and hopefully I can give something of value. But, obviously there's strings attached because this is the real world. So all right, so here's how it goes.
Bravo, Michael, bravo.
There you go. But I think we'll give more than we get, to be honest with you. All right, so here's the thing on why Billy and why not everybody and all that. They know, we don't know, but they know that their forefathers and others represented themselves as the gods of our holy books and religions and screwed things up so badly that we could possibly destroy our planet because of all these religious wars and craziness. They also know that now on our planet there are over 7.5 billion people, contrary to our current census, and that too many of them are still locked in religion, in magical belief systems, in lower levels of education, that if they prove their existence conclusively, that is, which something they could do not in 67 years, but in about 67 seconds, they would drive literally billions of people into insanity, psychosis, fear, suicide, aggression, attack, murder, irrationality, veneration, and the like. That's pretty easy to figure out. So they have a responsibility to not invade our free will. And as they passed, they sought to find one person who would have the strength of character and fortitude to endure, in Meier's case, 21 documented assassination attempts to assassinate his character, kidnap his children, to make life miserable for everybody, that person would persevere and would take the information that they wanted to put out, and this electronic age put it out the way it is, so it won't be altered, hopefully, and to do that no matter what, knowing that there are already on the planet millions of people who are connected to this, who may or may not know it. Not that there's some special, I'm an ET and you're not stuff, but simply who through evolution have been connected in the past to information like this, who may have died here as stranded ET travelers, and humans are incarnating here, but there's plenty of folks in the reincarnational cycle that are connected to this information and who will recognize it when it's brought to their attention. Some of these people will even be opponents of the case who will be triggered in different ways to attack it, but ultimately contribute to it. So this is not an ill-thought-out plan. We could say they didn't do it as well as they should have, but these are human beings, and wherever human beings are, things can and will get screwed up and will not be perfect, I guarantee you. Why has it taken 7 prophets instead of just 1? Probably this time they sat around and they said, look, we've had 6 shots at it with all these other guys, Enoch, Hosea, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. Let's get one this time that won't be charismatic. They won't start a religion around him. By the time the majority of the world finds out about him, he'll be a pot-bellied, middle-aged, gray-bearded, one-armed farmer. No one's getting excited about the people that want to kill him. Great idea. Let's do it. So there's Billy Meier, the seeming simple one-armed farmer who attracts to him scientists and physicists and Swiss military people who come to him for advice. And I've been there when he's had to shorten our meetings. He said, I'm sorry, Swiss military is coming to talk to me about some things they want to know. So these things go on all the time. So I just want to let you know that if you do your own homework here, you can find out enough to set you on one course or another regarding this information and ability to do something with it.
Okay, we got about one minute of free time, so.
Here it is. Yeah. If you order either the Meier Contacts DVD, which is a full 2-hour introductory DVD on this that contains prophetic information that occurred after the DVD came out, Or if you order the Silent Revolution of Truth film on DVD, we will send you a $25 CD with 120 translation excerpts free, no postage additional. In other words, you buy either of those two DVDs and you get a free $25. It's loaded with 100 pages of information on the mind.
And so what do they have to do to trigger that?
They order and they write the word free in their order, in their email or their phone thing or their check. Okay. Free. Just make sure that word is in there, and we know that they heard on Paranexus, and they get the free gift with the purchase of either of those two products.
All right, sounds good. I really appreciate you doing that. Okay. Now, we got just a couple of minutes remaining. I'm going to do some quick wrap-up here.
Sure.
And the quick wrap-up is, if you haven't been to Paranexus.org lately, go take a look. We've added some great new things to our memberships. We'd love to have you. If you're a previous member, we'd love to have you back. You can join Paranexus now for some 50 cents a month or $39 a year, and that includes website hosting, and it's real website hosting. You can actually host up to 25 domains, so you can have several different websites on the one account. It's a great deal, and it's part of every membership. Plus, there's some other things. We've got the Parapedia going that we'd love to have contributions toward to make it a reputable source of information, so we encourage you to do that. Come and join in and share your information, plus the registry, the database of events. If you've got some events, some sightings, cases, if you're an investigator or not, doesn't matter. Why not go and submit those to the database? You have to be a member to do that. Anybody can do that. But we'd love to have that information. And we've just got just a moment left. Michael Horn, we really appreciate you coming back. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Some interesting stuff.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's my pleasure, and there's tons available to people. Really, just avail yourself of it. And you can send me emails. I do answer everything, but it can take me time, as the autoresponder will indicate. But anybody takes the time to write me, I write back. Meier, as he is, relatively speaking, today, now he's 72 years old, speaking about all of the various factors of his own life, his childhood, his connection to the ETs and all this stuff. It was a process that was, for me and for my partner and other people, quite interesting, quite amazing, and hopefully be able to bring more and more people into the awareness of this case, and it's, in my opinion, it's monumental importance to humanity.
So, let's we talked about this when you were with us before, but let's just do a nutshell, and then we can get on with some other things that you wanted to talk about. But obviously, the Billy Meier case is a bit controversial, and it has been. And what are the primary reasons why you've kind of gone on board with it? What's your thinking, your reasoning? Why does it represent a genuine case to you?
Great questions. As you may know from my information, I first became acquainted with this case in 1979. That's 30 years ago. And when I saw the photo book that was put out at that time with the stunning and clear daytime photos of these craft, and even Swiss fighter jets trying to intercept it, and interviews with people, and analysis, it was really, really amazing to me. And what can I say? I started to look into it more and more deeply. I wanted to know if it was what it appeared to be. In these ensuing years, got involved with, I met all the main three major investigators on the case. I met Meier and numerous people, including family members and others who'd been around him and these events for 35 years in some cases or more. And I was able to conclude through researching all the testing that had been done on the physical evidence, all of the, and in time, the amazing prophetically accurate information. This was far beyond a lights-in-the-sky anecdotal UFO case. And I specifically state to people that this is an authentic case. As a matter of fact, I will claim that it is the only scientifically proven and still ongoing UFO contact case in the world, and that there is a reason for all of the evidence being presented, for all of the prophecies, and that it is more important than the physical evidence. It's the prophetic information and the case that are at the heart of the matter. There must be a reason. If a truly momentous event like contacts with an extraterrestrial race by an Earthman are true, if that's true, there has to be a reason behind it. I think it, to me right now, it's pretty clear.
Let's get right on with our guest tonight. Maybe some of you are Michael Horn, who was on our show here a while back, and I am pulling up his info. He's a rather eclectic guy. He the official contact for Billy Meier Contacts, and is award-winning painter and director and a number of things. And with that, I'm going to welcome Michael Horn. Glad to have you back, Michael.
Well, thank you so very much for having me on.
Yeah, well, it's always, you're such an eloquent guest. How could we say no?
Well, that would be eloquent in itself.
Well, of course, we did invite you back.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so you've got a new video out, right? Let's get to that.
I have a relatively new film out called The Silent Revolution of Truth, the one we're referring to. Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about it a little bit? We'll get that started off.
Sure. That's a film that I made with a friend of mine, a young German fellow. We went to Switzerland to interview Meier, Billy, and other people. This was in late 2006, and then we did some other interviews and work in 2007, and by just about the beginning of 2008, we came out with this film titled The Silent Revolution of Truth. And what's the best way to put it? It's the newest film, and it features but F's and S's and things like that sometimes are indistinguishable over the air, but they fly, and you'll find things in their prophecies and predictions and all that in the center of my website, and just some amazing information. And what to answer your question specifically, in the 1958 document that is, again, easily accessible from August of 1958, Meier specifically foretells 2 U.S. wars with Iraq. The second one, he says, will lead to an unbelievable disaster, terrorism, and other negative. That this war would be conducted under a president who will be the son of a former president. And how much more specific can we get for, that was written 50 years ago.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that is.
Absolutely. And he also names AIDS, AIDS, an epidemic. He foretells, while some other people may have also been talking about it, he specifically does foretell the use of plastic credit cards for transactions, that people will carry telephones on them for use for the telephone calls, that there will be televisions and computers. Imagine, 58, he says, computers in everyone's home that will be interconnected electronically around the world. He gives the forthcoming dates of the major rocket launches by the U.S. and the then Soviet Union to the moon. He also states the first U.S. claimed landing will be a hoax, which, some people fall down on either side of that claim.
Right.
And dozens more things. He warned specifically about a coming European Union. What the reason is, it's clear that the case is true. And I also don't say to people that everything in the case is true, because I'm not in a position to prove it one way or the other. I will state now that anybody doing what I and some other people have done can prove to their satisfaction one way or the other whether they think this is true. But I like the idea that you will hammer away at how do we know that it's authentic, and how do we know how important it is. That is what we must be paying attention to now, especially, and it's long-winded, but especially in light of all the claims about UFOs and ETs that are just bandied about everywhere.
All right.
What are some of the prophecies that kind of bring our audience up to speed, Michael, on the prophecies that have come to pass, and you know, what are some of the things that are left to kind of unfold?
Sure. Well, and I'm not going to skip your question at all. I just want people to know, are at least 4, 5, 6 different documents on my website accessible completely for free that have an enormous amount of prophetic information, but I'm going to refer to one website. Oh, thank you. It's They Fly, THEYF as in Frank, They Fly, FLY, theyfly.com. I was about to stick Frank in there for no reason. There's no Frank in there. It's theyfly.com. And
well, maybe Frank wants to go in there.
Hey, well,
there you go.
You can drop me an email. I'll get back to him in a couple of days.